So this is week number 16, and it is called To Each According to His Faith. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. John, chapter 3, we read, "Everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. But he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in God." It is a common experience shared by most people that when a person errs, he experiences a desire to hide that error from his conscience instead of holding it up for purification. Error clutches its misdeeds to itself and resists correction, though it is only in the state of purity that we can achieve perfect freedom. It requires an act of will to offer that awareness up to the light and to hold it there until one's inner darkness is completely dissipated. For every state of consciousness has its own attractive power, and the more we allow that attraction to act upon us, the more we attract to ourselves the objective circumstances and experiences natural to it. Our faith is the attractive power of our underlying state of consciousness. Goodness attracts goodness. It takes goodness even to see goodness. Evil attracts evil, and it takes evil even to see evil. That is, to take special note of its existence. Whatever there is in you of darkness or light, offer it up to the heights. In the supreme light alone will we find salvation. Accept nothing less in yourself as your lasting reality. As the Bhagavad Gita says in the 12th chapter, "Cling thou to me, clasp me with heart and mind, so shalt thou dwell surely with me on high. But if thy thought droops from such height, if thou best weak to set body and soul upon me constantly, despair not. Give me lower service. Seek to reach me, worshipping with steadfast will. And if thou canst not worship steadfastly, work for me. Toil in works pleasing to me. For he that laboureth right for love of me shall finally attain. But if in this thy faint heart fails, bring me thy failure." Thus through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. So, let's first start with the Gospel of St. John chapter 3, where everyone that does evil hates the light and doesn't come into the light, lest his deeds be reproved. But he that does truth comes to the light, that his deeds may be manifest, and that they are wrought in God. So, I'm happy that we have this after last week. Last week we were talking about the prerequisites for immortality, and obviously those are quite a high thing. And today we find ourselves in reality, where each one of us is a mixture, in outward manifestation anyways, of goodness and darkness. And obviously that most of us, especially those who are interested on the spiritual path, have much more light within them than darkness. But we're trying to figure out, how do we get rid of every last vestige of darkness? How do we become perfectly pure? How do we become 100% light? And there's clues here in this little reading that we just had, that all of us, that we are going to make mistakes, we're going to do wrong things, but the thing is not to try to hold them from God, because you see, God sees them anyways. It's an interesting thing to contemplate, that all around us are angels. They're seeing every deed that we ever do, even if we lock ourselves in our room and think that no one can see us, or if we write nasty comments on the internet anonymously, that God sees absolutely everything. The angels all around us see absolutely everything. But even beyond that, if you have the good fortune to have a true guru, he will know every act that you do. He will know every thought that you think. That even if someone's not your guru, if you have the good fortune to be near saints, that saints also know absolutely everything that you do. And it's a little disconcerting to live near saints or be near saints when they know absolutely everything that you do. But in the end, you find that it's a wonderful thing, that they're there just like God to help you, not to say, oh, look what a bad thing you've done, but to gently correct you and to help you figure out how you can overcome all the negative habits and tendencies that you may have. And the highest way, and we're going to get into that more at the end of this talk when we read that Gita section again, but the highest way is for us to do Kriya Yoga, for us to uplift that negative energy and burn it in the light where it never comes back into ourselves again. And I'll bring this point up right now, that we think that, well, we're here and we have to work out our karma. Perhaps we're trying to meditate deeply and we just keep thinking about mangoes. So we think, well, okay, I can't meditate because I'm just thinking of these mangoes. May as well just go and have the mangoes. And that's fine, sort of. But let's analyze it deeply. If you go and have the mangoes and eat 30 mangoes until you just feel like you never ever want to see a mango ever again, that's not working out your karma. That you're just pushing the pendulum to the other side, and it will swing back. For a while you will just have this great dislike for mangoes. If you really overdid it, that could even last into lifetimes, and it's why we have likes and dislikes for foods and other things. But at some point that can come back and swing back, and then you'll be finding that you just crave mangoes again, and you just don't know why, and you just don't know what to do about it. Working out your karma, what it really means is that if you decide to get up from your meditation and eat a few mangoes, it's all right. But in the eating of those few mangoes, you realize that the mango itself is not bringing you happiness, that it's your reaction to that outer event. And in that you find a neutral space within yourself towards mangoes. And that means that if you have to eat mangoes for every day of your life, a few of them every day, all right. If you never eat a mango ever again, all right. That's working out your karma. When you can get to a space within where you realize that we're on a path of self-realization. So if you realize that that thing is not going to make you happy or unhappy, that it's all within yourself, and you gain power over yourself, really. You see, you're not gaining power over that outer thing. You're gaining power over yourself. So understand that we can never overcome desires by indulging in them. That you indulge, it just builds up that power more. The only way to overcome desires is there's two ways. One, in meditation, have that realization and burn it up using Kriya Yoga in the light of the spiritual eye. Or secondly, in action, to understand, because you are in a deeper state, like you're thinking about God and not the mango, and you gain that realization, and then you overcome it. So those are the two ways to overcome karma, to work out karma, but in the deepest understanding. And I hope that I've made that point clear, because it's a very important point, because we've been on this cosmic hamster wheel called planet Earth, just going around and around thinking that we're going to get it right this time, and the trick is we never get it right, that outwardly it never works, we can never line this up. I love the way that Swami Kriyananda said it, that he said it's just like a deck of cards. You can keep reshuffling and reshuffling, and the aces get in different places, and you think, oh, got all the aces now, it's going to be great. But it never is. Eventually you shuffle, and then you get the twos, or whatever is good or bad in the card game that you happen to be playing. That just goes on and on. But your outer reaction to it, that's what you are able to change as you evolve, as you grow spiritually. So, let's see here. Now, error clutches its misdeeds to itself and resists correction. So this is also very important, because earlier I was talking about hiding in our room. There's something even more subtle on the spiritual path that's such an adept at hiding, and that is our ego. It's our ego that's really hiding and just clutches to these wrong things that we do, makes up all kinds of excuses under the sun of why, well, it's really okay that I yelled at my coworker. He deserved it anyways. How else will he learn? No one else is going to ever tell him unless I do it. We can make up hundreds of, excuses, but at the end of the day, when we go home and we don't feel good about it, we have to live with our own conscience. We have to live with, are we pure in God's light? Are we as perfect as Jesus Christ is perfect? Be ye therefore perfect, even as God in heaven is perfect. And in that state of perfection, yelling at your coworker just doesn't cut it. And the yelling could be okay, but 99 times out of 100, again, it's just the ego justifying itself. If you're completely calm and you can turn around and then smile at your other coworker and just, God's doing this to me, I don't really want to do it, but it's what's happening, and then yell at your coworker again, but on the inside you're absolutely perfectly calm, and even afterwards, I've tried this exact thing. If afterwards, day after day afterwards, in meditation, you can still feel perfectly calm and centered about the whole incident, well then all right. But if you feel that little tremor on the inside that something's not quite right, then I wouldn't recommend trying these high things like that. But anyway, the point of this was that it's the ego itself that is hiding, and it likes to hide in the darkness and just say, yeah, it's all right. Maybe nobody saw that. But as we start realizing the higher truths, that all the angels are there watching us all the time, that God and the Guru are there all the time watching us, we come to a point where we simply can't live like that anymore. And even better, we come to a point where we want to offer up every misdeed, every little wrong action that we've had. We also want to offer up, as it goes on to say later in this reading, we want to offer up every thought, but behind that thought is our consciousness. And we want to try to raise our consciousness and live in that uplifted consciousness. That if we live in the highest state of consciousness and God realization, everything else works out just fine. But it takes time to reach to that. It takes time for us to go through incarnations really and realize, well, this little thing that might be all right for my friends and many people in the world, it's simply not working for me. That it's taking away my inner attunement with the Guru. It's taking away my ability to keep my mind on God in the workplace and even in my meditations. And then we have to refine ourselves. We have to decide for ourselves, because even the Guru won't do it for you. We have to decide within ourselves what's acceptable behavior for us, what are acceptable thoughts, and what's not. Having a Guru in the body, there's nothing like it. But even still, he leaves it up to you to learn your own lessons and to work these things out. And he'll give you all the time you need to work it out. Another point that's made in this reading is that Swamiji said that it takes goodness to see goodness. That if there's someone with a low consciousness, we can't teach him certain lessons. That we simply have to wait until he's ready. And the Guru will wait until we're ready to learn our lessons. And it's just simply how it is. The Guru will wait incarnations. It simply doesn't make sense to tell someone with a Rajasic consciousness that he shouldn't strive toward making money. Because he should, if he has a Rajasic consciousness. That's uplifting for him. He's rising out of a state of tamas and learning more and more how to get his energy going until he realizes that the sattvic state comes when he's no longer afraid of putting out more and more energy. Where, yes, he has to put it out, but he reaches a plateau where it's a joyful thing to be putting out energy for God and receiving that flow of energy. And it's no longer a tiring thing, but that's something each of us has to realize within ourselves. Another thing that I wanted to mention while we're talking about working out karma and how do we get to these states of high consciousness is that, let's say you have a huge desire for sweets, and it's a perfectly acceptable thing to get out of that environment, to go to an environment where there are no sweets for a little while. You can go into seclusion for a few days or for a week and bring no sweets. And you'll realize, if you do that, that actually this desire is not as strong within you as you thought, and that you can let it go. But then the real test comes when you go back into daily life, and you have to go into the sweets shop to buy sweets for your children or whoever, whatever. And in that sweets shop, you get the real test of, do you still have that little samskara for sweets? And now this becomes an important thing, because you can't run away from the sweet shop forever. You can't just say, I'm going to live my life in seclusion so that I no longer eat sweets, because at the end of it, your spirituality has to be tested in the cold light of day. Tested in the cold light of day, those words come from Sister Gyanamata, one of Paramahansa Yogananda's most advanced disciples. However, if you're not yet strong enough to resist those sweets, it's quite right to not go into the sweet shop, maybe even for a long time, for years. And so it's up to you to figure out that balance of retreating. And the highest seclusion, the highest retreat comes every day that you do into meditation, of dropping all of your desires so that you can focus your mind on God. But you have to figure out then what tests you're willing to face and what you can handle in the daily world that won't sink you back down. And so it is also quite right to stay away from those things in the outer world. And there's certain circumstances that until we're a master, there's just no need to even go near them. I'm not even going to go into some of those, but you can obviously think of some of the most ridiculously downward pulling environments and circumstances that there's no need to go near. So do have a sattvic and uplifting environment to the extent that you can. But at the end, we have to become so free from all desires that absolutely nothing can touch us, that our mind is just rooted, it's just grasped to God alone. And we know that that's really the only thing that ever has been, ever will be, the only thing that will ever give us joy. And we become very grounded in that. Master put it in a very nice way also. He said that when you churn cream, that it turns to butter. And after it's been churned, then the butter can float on water. It can mix with any kind of water. It's fine, it floats on it. But if you take that cream and mix it with the water before you churn it, then it will get diluted in the water and it will lose itself. So you can meditate on that analogy. I now want to go into the Bhagavad Gita here because I just find this reading, I find it absolutely beautiful. So let's get into it. I'm just making sure I didn't forget anything before we do that. Okay, so this is again in chapter 12. That first reading that was in the book Rays of the One Light, I believe was from Sir Edwin Arnold's translation, and it is beautiful. But this translation that Swami Kriyananda has given us in the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, I just find it easier to relate to. So I'll read this slowly and also talk about it a little bit. I find it very uplifting. Also, it's an interesting thing also that the Gita has been translated by so many different people, but what it is to have a guru, to have someone who you want to relate to their understanding of the highest scriptures, that it does make a difference. Anyway, so this is chapter 12 and stanzas 6 and 7. For those who venerate only me, offering to me all their actions, with their minds concentrated on me by yoga practice, and their heart's feelings uplifted to me in devotion, such devotees I rescue from the ocean of mortality. So number one, it's Krishna who's rescuing us. That we have to make the effort, but ultimately it's He who does it through us. Number two, that we have to have our minds concentrated on Krishna, and he says right in this verse, that comes through yoga practice. And we have to have our heart's feelings uplifted. And those two, we have to get those both happening at the same time. An uplifted devotional heart and a mind, both of those united on God. If you only get one happening or the other, it gets out of balance and we fall again. So remember that. And then third, in this one stanza, he's saying that we have to offer to Krishna all of our actions. And again, it's the balance that I was talking about earlier in that sweet shop. That yes, you at the end have to learn how to go into the sweet shop, that it's not enough to just hide in seclusion. But even that, you have to offer that to God. And in that way, then you're not touched by it. All of your actions, if you offer them up to God, you're not touched by it. But that doesn't mean do bad actions. That if you have some bad actions that you just can't help, pray about it. Offer it to God. Because in that you'll feel that when you're praying to God and you're doing some wrong action, you'll feel, I don't like this. Because it's not that God's saying, well, I'm in everything, I'm doing the bad action through you, it's all right. Yes, He is doing the bad action through you, but no, it's not all right from the highest sense. And from the highest sense, it is all right. But it's not all right from the highest sense because you need to achieve the perfection that God has. And it is all right from the highest sense, because in that view of eternity where you see every action your soul did, you see that it was wrong, but in that wrongness you realize it was wrong, and it brings you back to rightness, righteousness, going back to God. So that's why the spiritual path is a little bit confusing, but we have to have that understanding. Let's keep reading. Immerse your consciousness in me alone. Direct all your discrimination toward finding me. Then, beyond any doubt, you shall come to me. Do not forget, the purpose of life is to find God. Number one rule, number one note to self. What are we doing today? Finding God. And we need to keep that at all times our highest priority. If we do that, everything else comes in line and everything works out. If we forget that, things don't work so well. And sorry to scare you, we have to do that every moment. It's not just 24/7, that would be 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's, I don't even know what that big number is of how many seconds are in a day or anything like that. But every second we have to be thinking of God. It takes time to achieve this state of consciousness, but we just have to keep trying. And eventually we will come more and more into the light, into that state of consciousness that we want, God alone. God alone. So, that's that. O Dhananjaya, which is another name for Arjuna. If you cannot absorb your thoughts in the contemplation of me, then practice the techniques of yoga, which are intended to help develop concentration. Awesome. Because let's face it, most of us aren't at that point where every second of every day we're just thinking God alone, God alone. So we need help. And that's why God, Krishna, Paramahansa Yogananda, has given us Kriya Yoga. That if we practice Kriya Yoga, it helps burn up the desires which are taking us outside of ourselves, and it gives us the ability in meditation to unite our consciousness and our mind and fix it on God alone. And it helps us then in our outer activities and duties to keep our mind on God alone. Do not underestimate the power of Kriya Yoga. It's why I played that chant this evening. Pranayam, be thy religion. Pranayam will give thee salvation. And absolutely, pranayam will enable you to achieve those higher steps which Patanjali has outlined of yoga, of withdrawing our mind, pratyahara, and then dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. But those higher states don't happen until we can withdraw our energy, our mind, everything, and feel inside that we really are solidly within. Okay, gotta do that Kriya. If, however, you find yoga practice too difficult, then perform all actions in the thought of me. By this means, too, you shall achieve final success. And this is interesting. Number one, it sounds like he's putting karma yoga or action lower than yoga. But it's not that, because if you read at the end of this book, he gives Arjuna goes back and forth. Which is better, karma yoga or jnana yoga, where I just sit contemplating you in meditation all day long? And Krishna's final decided opinion is nishkam karma, that to perform your actions while thinking of only of Krishna and give the result of the action, that while you're doing it, give that to Krishna. And there's one third thing that just slipped my mind. Maybe it's before you even contemplate the action of give that to him and plan with him. I don't know if that's true. I just kind of made that third one up to look good. But you can read in this book to figure that out. But we need to be giving all of the action to Krishna. And so we need to lead a balanced lifestyle. Action and meditation. And in the end, the two blend, and you see there is no distinction between them, because the goal is to keep your mind on God, God, God. Whether you're doing that in meditation or whether you're doing that in action, it becomes the same. But it's so beautiful also, because there's times when we meditate and it's just going nowhere. So much out of love for us. Paramahansa Yogananda put in the autobiography of a yogi that on the day that his guru slapped him on the chest and gave him samadhi, that his mind was distributed like leaves in the wind. And so even he was having problems. But it's okay if we have that problem, we find it difficult. Then that's when we switch to doing action. And it's his promise, it's Krishna's promise, this is God's promise to all of us. By this means too, you shall achieve final success. So that means doing all action in thought of God. And then the last part, which I find so dear. But if even during activity you cannot think of me, then give me your intentions. Ever striving to discipline your mind, offer to me the fruits of your every labor. It's so beautiful, because even if we fail, and I do give it to Sir Edwin Arnold, even if thy faint heart fails you, that give that failure even to me, means to Krishna. It is beautifully said by Sir Edward Arnold. But at this point, if you cannot, even during activity, you can't think of me, give me your intentions. So this brings us full circle, that we need to make our one intention in life finding God, and let that intention pervade our consciousness and all other forms and aspect of life. And if we have that one intention in finding God, and if we keep trying here, it says, ever striving to discipline your mind. It means we can't give up. We can't just go out and lead a wild outward lifestyle with a quick prayer in the morning and a Hail Mary at the end, saying, God, please forgive me for these things at night before we go to bed. That we have to strive and strive and strive, but doing, done. One day we will achieve this state the saints have made it to. There's one more little story I want to put in here as we wrap up, and that is that this might seem so far away from us, these states of being able to think of God all the time, but remember that Paramahansa Yogananda said it takes very, very, very good karma to even want to know God. So even if you want to know God, you're already very, very close. You just have to keep going a little more, do a little bit more to purify yourself. With right action, with Nishkam Karma, thinking only of Krishna and giving the results to Krishna as you do the action. And with Kriya Yoga and climbing Patanjali's, it is a ladder in a way, and it's not a ladder in a way, but I'm not getting into that right now. Climbing that ladder of Patanjali to understand yoga to its depths. And one more story that might help you is that Paramahansa Yogananda, he had a student in his school in Ranchi, and that student, he just could not give up smoking. He just tried everything, but he just couldn't do it. And so Master knew all about it. And so Master called him in one day and said, I know you're having a hard time quitting smoking. It's all right. I only ask you one thing, that if you want to smoke, do it in my presence. So the boy agreed. And I don't know the exact details of the story, but I imagine that the boy tried once, and he just couldn't do it. And then from then on, he decided to give up smoking. And so the same thing as we started this talk off with. Any bad habits you have, offer them up to God. Offer them up to the light of God, to that light of God which shines in you eternally. And you will achieve purity. You will achieve the highest state of purity that all the masters have achieved. It's been a great joy this evening spending time together. I look forward to next week, and I look forward to walking this path of perfect purity together. Om.